Sometimes she would like put something in like a Ziploc and she'd be like, I'm gonna go put this on top of my trash can. It's trash. So it's not a gift, it's just trash if it's something that you're interested in.
Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Tiffany. I'm a school psychology intern, and today I have a very special guest with me. She's a good friend of mine. Her name is Laura, and I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Hi everyone, I'm Laura. I'm a early childhood special education teacher. I've worked in education now going on 4 years, and I also have a background in ABA. I did that for a few years before I got into the field of education.
And that is a great segue into our topic today. We are going to talk all about ABA. And I've had so many questions in the comments about this. I did ABA for a few years before starting grad school. So we will first start off with a definition of ABA.
Applied Behavior Analysis, or ABA, is a treatment based on behaviorist theories which state that desired behaviors can be taught through a system of rewards and consequences. ABA and behaviorism are largely attributed to B.F. Skinner, and a lot of ABA is actually based on operant conditioning.
So I thought we would start off by sharing our personal experiences in the field, and we actually met in the field and we worked together at 2 different companies, right?
Yep.
And I think wherever you work kind of determines how your job is going to go, like your supervisors and the setting, and it really depends on where you are. So we can start with where we met. We were young and I feel like we were very naive.
Yeah, we were kind of just like thrown into a place with clients and kind of given instructions on what to do for the duration of our shift with them. So it was very like step by step. We got assigned clients, certain time slots with them. They would come to the center. We would have our own little areas to work with them. And sometimes we would work with a pair of brothers. So we would spend a lot of time together. And then we would, switch off to our other clients.
Yeah, so that place was more like center-based. I did have some, home-based clients, but most of them were at the center. And I loved that I had my own office. It was like my first full-time job, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have my own therapy room. Like, I definitely felt like I wasn't qualified because I only had a bachelor's in psychology. Yeah. And sometimes they also had like college students there. They did provide a little bit of training, and then they kind of gave us like a list of like things to do during the session. And so training wise.
So I remember kind of having like an orientation before my first day there. And I remember it being just one day. So it was maybe a few hours long. They gave me the definition of ABA and kind of what it looks like. Luckily, I had taken an ABA course at George Mason as part of my undergrad. So luckily, I had that foundation to work with also.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
So you had like some background.
Yes. So actually, I believe it was my intro to special education course, but the professor had a strong interest in ABA, so the whole course was like unofficially like all on ABA. Should we go check on them?
A few moments later.
The first company we were at, I worked full-time, and they try to fill out 30 hours with clients, and then the last 10 hours I had like office hours. So I did like paperwork, or what did I do? I guess
around the office. I think they gave us kind of like tasks to do around the office a little bit.
Yeah, I guess I did paperwork, office work, and yeah, whatever they needed to fill those 10 hours. But you were part-time there, right?
Yes. And I think my hours changed a little bit from like semester to semester. They would kind of rework the schedule and give you new hours and new clients every so often.
So it sounds like it's pretty flexible if you're working part-time.
Mm-hmm. It was very flexible.
So I guess pay, I felt like hourly, like the pay was pretty decent, given that like you don't have like a master's.
Yeah, I think being part-time and the flexibility that it offered, it was pretty fair. Looking back, I might have asked for a little bit more. But as somebody who, like you, was getting my first job in like the field that I was interested in, I was more than happy to take what they were offering.
Yeah, I felt like I just had to take it.
Yeah. Even though I drove a really long commute, and I drove a lot for clients' houses, and we didn't get paid for that drive time, which was huge.
That's true.
But it was fair, I suppose, considering that we were underqualified probably at the time, because I had not graduated yet with my bachelor's even. So I was really excited about that.
Yeah, I think we both commuted a lot. And then we moved to another company that was a lot closer to home, but that was all home-based. So they didn't have a center for us to work at. We had to drive to all the clients' homes. And that actually made me drive even more than I did at my previous job. I was in like all the way from like Loudoun County to like Prince William. And then schedule-wise, we were given clients, and then they expect us to fill out like, what was it, like a minimum of 30 hours to get full-time?
30 hours, yep.
And I had such a hard time filling 30 hours a week.
Yeah.
And without the 30 hours, I think it was like 2 consecutive months or something, you don't get benefits.
Yeah, you lose your health insurance. Yeah, that was really stressful.
Yes!
Really, really stressful, especially because I had my daughter on my health insurance. So I had a lot riding on those 30 hours. And if a family would say, hey, we're going on vacation, or hey, we've got a stuffy nose over here, so please don't come, there goes my health insurance for me and my daughter.
They ask you how you are, and you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
Yeah, and if we only had school-age children, they're in school most of the day.
Yeah.
So we only had hours like after school or on the weekend. And I think sometimes we have to sacrifice like our Saturdays and Sundays to make those hours work. I think there's like pros and cons of like both settings. I think sometimes it's more effective in the home, but sometimes it's also harder to get integrated in someone else's comfort zone.
And also I feel like in their home setting, like you said, you can get more into like their natural environment and see their family dynamics and offer more help in like a more organic way. But then again, I remember being in some very unsafe situations where I was all by myself, and with no immediate assistance available to me, not somebody that I could just call and be guaranteed an answer. So that was a huge setback also, thinking about those situations where I felt extremely uncomfortable in.
That's a really good point. I think there were some situations in the center-based company, but then I always had people, if I open my office door and then call for help, someone's always there.
Yeah.
Sometimes we had like chairs thrown at us. Sometimes children would bite, like all kinds of things, you know? And it's because they're still learning how to regulate their emotions, or they can't communicate. And so I can't blame the children. It's our job to change their behaviors. But it happens. And I think that's why training is so important. Like, man training or whatever it is to keep yourself safe and the client safe, and also just like correct ABA techniques, maybe. So that's like schedule wise, we kind of set our own schedules, like probably like 2 to 4 hour blocks with children. And then the pay, I did ask for a little bit more because I had previous experience now, and so they did honor that, and I was very thankful for that. I know you worked at another company.
Yes. So after the first place of employment with doing ABA, I got another job where they were offering me more hours. And this place, they did offer to train me as a registered behavior technician. It was free to me, and I just had to go through all of the requirements with the supervisors there, and I got that certification. So that made me feel more confident and more qualified in what I was doing. And then that was also a home-based company, so they would give me a client, a family, and we would just kind of work out the hours as the families needed or how many hours they were qualified for.
That's awesome. I think more and more companies are training people to become RBTs, and I think it's good that they're making that kind of like a requirement now, because that's more training that's going to help you become a better therapist or technician. I forgot that like at the second company that I was at, I started taking BCBA courses. They did not pay for any of it, and it was very expensive, but I did learn a lot taking those courses. I took 2 or 3 classes, and then I kind of hopped into education and then found school psychology. But That's like another route you can take. If you're really interested in ABA and you think becoming a BCBA is your path, then you can find companies that will like pay or sponsor you. And you might have to like repay in like maybe 1 or 2 years of work, or they'll have, you know, their contracts. But I think it's another thing to consider.
Yeah, definitely.
So I thought we can also talk about, I feel like we just talked about like the pros and cons of the job. But maybe just like listing like 2-3 things that are like a general pro and con of like the work or like the job of an ABA therapist. So we'll start with pros. We think it's really good experience for you. I think both of us kind of use it as a stepping stone for our next like job or school or career. And without it, I don't know if I would have gotten into grad school. Like, I feel like it's such a big part of like special education or psychology, just working with children with disabilities, that it really helped me out personally.
Yeah. Actually, I was hired on a provisional license as a special education teacher. And I didn't realize this until after I had gotten the job, but the idea is that it's up to a principal, obviously, to hire you to work in their school on a provisional license. And it's still subjective if they think that you're qualified for the position, because obviously you don't have the credentials yet. And so I feel like ABA gave me like the confidence that I was able to convey to the principals interviewing me. And I could say, I have this background. I work with special needs children all the time. I work on their behavior. I am comfortable managing very difficult situations. I'm comfortable de-escalating students. I'm okay with, you know, issues in the classroom that might arise where I have to make decisions really quickly. And I think because of ABA, I got the job as a special education teacher on a provisional license, which, you know, gave me an opportunity to go back to school and get my master's in special education.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
It's also like slow progress, but very rewarding to work with these children and families and like see them making progress, you know, and their behaviors changing for the better, or them like learning how to communicate. That's huge for the child and the family, and like you're going to feel good about that.
I had a family who the dad was in the FBI and they had the option to move, and they told me that the biggest reason that they didn't want to move was to keep his ABA hours with me. And I took that as like the best compliment. I was so flattered, and also it just felt so rewarding that, you know, all the hard work that we had put into with this child, that the family felt like it was worth it, and that my hard work and time and efforts were really paying off in like a very personal way with this family, to make, you know, to base their life decisions around his ABA schedule with me. So that was really awesome.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. For one of my clients, like I taught him how to brush his teeth, and like we used like a token board so he would be motivated to do it. And I thought that was huge. Like, it's like small things like that, you know?
They're so huge.
Yeah.
And you can teach them such practical things in their home.
Yes. Yes. Like things that should be like easy or obvious for us to do. Like it's hard for them.
Yeah.
And it's hard to teach that.
Yeah. And so the tiny things are huge things for the families, and they are usually just so grateful. And so that's a really good feeling.
Yeah. And I know before you mentioned that it's really good that this job is flexible.
Yes. I was going to school, I believe, still when I started my job part-time at the first place. And I had a 1-year-old daughter. So yeah, the flexibility was extremely important. So that was nice. I had a little bit of control over how I wanted to build my schedule. And even though it took a while to get the right combination of like clients and their availability, eventually I was able to get a schedule that I was pretty happy with.
I can't believe she went to school and had a job and had a child at the same time. Like, that's insane to me.
It was a hard time. And then we would stay up really late to do all of our data. Do you remember that at Compass?
Oh my God. We were like data leads or whatever they called us.
We were supposed to teach other... I guess at this company we were called clinicians?
Yes.
We were clinicians. That's another interesting thing. At our first company we were called associate therapists or something
Yeah,
like
ABA
that.
therapists, and they have like different levels, like
I was in
master
a-
level and like.
I was an associate level. I remember that, and I remember thinking, "Oh, that sounds like cool," even though that just means like beginner. I was a beginner therapist there, and then I went on to be a registered behavior technician, and then I went on to be a clinician, and essentially we were just doing the same thing with a lot of different titles.
Yeah. Point made.
Yeah.
Okay, so I hate to talk about negative things, but we are going to go over the cons because I just want to be honest with you all. Like, these are our experiences and maybe it's not a good fit for you. Did you feel like the hours were long? And like...
Extremely. I think sometimes the developmental level and the need of the child didn't match up with the amount of hours that they were qualified and therefore given.
Yeah.
So like I had a 4-year-old who was he was verbal, he was potty trained, he had all the appropriate adaptive skills of a 4-year-old. Socially, he was still working on a few skills, and he had an older brother with autism, so parents were suspecting, that he might have autism as well. But I had, I want to say 20 hours a week with him. And filling up those 20 hours with a 4-year-old was not easy. So then it kind of felt at times like I was babysitting him, or I was just like a companion, or I would, end up giving him more breaks than ABA time because, there's only so much you can do with a 4-year-old before they lose interest.
Mm-hmm.
Developmentally, they learn by playing and by doing things in their natural environment, and I could just kind of facilitate those things. But it felt a little funny to be billing for hours where I might just be walking with him to the park, even though we can work on really important skills doing all of those natural environment type of things. The hours felt very long.
I agree. Even like a 2-3 hour session, unless I had a minute by minute plan, like I wasn't really sure what I was doing all the time.
Yeah.
And that made the time go so slow. And so what I started doing, like at the second company, I started making like a schedule of like with the child to show them like what we're going to do today.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're going to have like drawing time. And like, I guess within those activities, you have transitions and you can like apply ABA here and there. But like, I never really got direction from my supervisor, like, I guess with some clients.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think when you don't know what you're doing and you're kind of pulling things out of your butt, like,
yeah,
it makes the time go by really slow.
It drags. Yeah, very much.
And I think like we wanted to do a good job.
Yes.
And we didn't want to just sit there and babysit.
Yeah. And feel like a fraud.
Yes, 100%. Like, I think that's why we also we were so stressed out.
Yeah. And then toward the end of my time with like the last company I worked for, we were both leads. So they would trust us to like go with other clinicians and like help them problem solve. And at that point I still kind of felt like, well, am I qualified to give advice? I don't know if I am. They think I'm doing a good job, but there was like very unclear expectations a lot of the time. So it made it very stressful for somebody like me who I like to have a checklist or a rubric or very clear guidelines to what I'm doing to make sure I'm doing a good job, especially when we're talking about working with little kids or bigger kids with disabilities. You want to make sure you're doing right by them and the families and not just wasting anybody's time and money.
Yeah. And I hope there are people out there. I mean, I hope everyone out there doing this job feels the same way and they don't take advantage of like how new or unregulated this field is. And I feel like we just like touched upon like 5 different things.
Yeah. One thing kind of leads to the next.
Yeah. I guess we can just read off a couple other ones since we kind of just talked about everything.
Yeah.
I thought it was very exhausting because of the long hours, because like you always had to be on, and sometimes the behaviors that you dealt with were extreme or like they were just a lot to deal with.
Yeah.
not all plans were completed with fidelity. And so that's because we weren't fully trained, or the directions weren't clear, or there were no instructions or plans in place. And I think that's a huge problem in the field. And that's why I turned away from it after taking a few classes. I took the classes and I was like, this sounds amazing, but this is not how it's going out in the
Right.
real world. And I was like, this is fraudulent.
Yeah.
And that's why I had to leave. And like, I'm glad school psychology kind of encompasses so much more. And they also do ABA and, you know, behavior plans. I think the field needs to change, and it could be very good and helpful.
Yeah. Like, in theory, all of it is great. When you're reading about it in textbooks, when supervisors are explaining to you how, you know, a plan should be going, it sounds so great. It sounds like it should work. But when you're out there in the real world, in a student's home, and they're just tired from school, or they have a bellyache, or their mom is frustrated with them, plans just don't work the way that you expect them to all the time. And I know I experienced this a lot. Like, I would meet with my supervisors. They'd say, how are they doing on this goal? And I'd say, well, they haven't, you know, met the goal yet. And then they would say, okay, well, let's try something else. Okay, well, let's try this. Okay, well, let's try this. And then, you know, the whole half a year has passed, and the supervisor has never even met with this client in person. And they just keep giving me more, you know, theoretical advice and plans and things that I should be doing. And then I go to their house and I do my best, but half the time I end up feeling like I'm still just babysitting them because things don't go as planned, or we don't have, I feel like sometimes I just didn't have the tools or the support to carry out these plans or the goals that I had for my clients.
I wonder, maybe it was like a shortage of like supervisors, or like, I know there's always a waiting list, but if they can't handle their caseload, maybe they shouldn't take more clients. I'm not really sure why we had to go through that. And no one should have to go through that.
Yeah. I think it comes down to like the way that the companies were structured. Most of the time, I don't think we ever had the support that we actually needed. I think we could have used a lot more supervision like in the field. And I don't know if maybe the field has changed since then, but I know my supervisors maybe met with me and the client and their families once or twice throughout like a year's worth of time.
Wait, you haven't met with your supervisor?
My supervisors would not go out to my clients' homes.
Right, so you were like the middleman.
Yes. And
but it can't work like that.
I feel like I needed more of the supervisor's guidance, and I never got enough to the point where I felt comfortable doing what I was doing, or doing what they were asking me to do.
Yeah. I think it's like very stressful, or it could also be dangerous if you don't have all the training, like the necessary training. And I really hope that the field has changed in the past few years, because it's been a few years since we've been in the field. And maybe it's just our area like that we're living in. I'm really not sure. Maybe there's different like state regulations. And so my hope is that, I don't know, like they have tighter rules or like better training. By the way, BCBAs get paid a lot.
I met a handful of BCBAs at my last place. Well, I'll be honest. There was one supervisor that I had that I could tell she was so passionate about what she did. She would have all of these materials and she would say, look, I have these things. What do you need? How can I help you? What can we do? Like, you tell me about the client if you know more about them than I do. And then we'll come up with something to get something together. I'll meet you at their house. We'll work through this together. And she was super encouraging, and she was really good at her job. And but I found that that was rare. It wasn't the norm for me. So when I worked with her, I just I finally felt like I got a little bit of what I needed. But she was only my supervisor for some of my clients. She was the exception and not the rule, in my experience, at least.
Yeah, honestly, like, with our experiences, that I wasn't sure if that job was sustainable for us. And obviously we left.
It wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't at all. I think the burnout,
the burnout
was so real. I remember toward the end of my time at my last company, I would just dread my drive to work. I would not do any of my data input until the very end of the week at like 2 a.m. And I would text you and tell you about how miserable I was and how I just couldn't do this anymore. I mean, I remember being in such scary situations, getting zero support. I would spend hours a day driving. I think I might have spent like on average 4 hours a day driving.
4 hours?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I would drive from Woodbridge to Chantilly to Fredericksburg to Manassas.
Fredericksburg?
Well, remember that's where the office was?
Yes, I do.
Remember we went there by accident one day for no reason? And then we went to Waffle House.
We thought we had a training. I mean, we did have a training. So we were driving down to the training in Fredericksburg. Then we realized it was in our Manassas office, which is like 10 minutes away.
So we drove like an hour for fun, basically.
Well,
Really
an hour
early.
there and then an hour back.
Yeah, and we missed the training because it was happening in Manassas while we were driving back and forth. So yeah, I would spend so many hours driving, and you don't get paid for that time unless you're face-to-face with a client. You can't bill for anything, when really the job requires a lot of planning, a lot of data entry, and like analyzing your data and meeting with your supervisor. And I think they would allow us to bill for like one hour for data entry. And in reality, we could have used a whole lot more and a whole lot more time to prep materials or for, you know, just doing our own research or
collaboration, supervision. Yes,
exactly.
all of that. I totally agree.
So I think I must have been working on, you know, not billable hours, but total close to 40 to 50 hours. And I was only getting paid for 30. And barely 30. Most months I was extremely stressed out about reaching that 30 hour
I met
mark.
30 hours once. And like, I was lucky that I didn't need healthcare. Like, I didn't have a child. And it was almost impossible to meet those 30 hours. And yeah, including driving, I'm sure we worked like 50
at least
plus
40 hours. Yeah. Because I remember I would wake up at 5 a.m. to meet with clients before school just to be able to get my hours in. I would have like a huge gap in my day. And then I would go out and meet clients again at, you know, between 3 p.m. and 9 p.m. And, you know, families always need the help. So they're just open to all of these super late hours. But it was not sustainable at all. It was extremely stressful. Like my work-life balance was all off. And that was actually the biggest reason that I looked to the field of education, because I thought nothing sounded better than having a set schedule and being able to clock out at the end of a day and worry about my work at a workplace and then just go home.
Does that happen for most teachers though?
Definitely not. But actually, maybe this can be a personal pro that the job had for me, is that after leaving ABA, I became very conscious about like work-life balance and being able to leave work at work. So I probably do a little bit better at this than most teachers do. I do not check my work emails after school. I don't answer parent emails, phone calls, texts. I don't even give out my personal cell phone number to my families because I think it's super important in order to do my best job when I'm at work and not burn myself out in a matter of years like I did with ABA, where I just felt like my whole day revolved around the job. My parents were texting me. They would call me in their moments of crisis to my personal cell phone number. The families that I had great relationships with got murky with like, you know, the professional and like the friendship, you know, thing. The
boundaries.
Yes, boundaries. So my boundaries would kind of get blurred with those families because you're in their most intimate like spaces and moments, and you're helping them through some very tough times. And so they look to you for support, but you still have to be very professional about it. And so
it's hard. I remember sometimes like they would offer you meals and
we could not accept it.
Well, sometimes like I feel like if it was like a small Christmas gift or like it really like it's like a case by case basis. One time I don't even know if I'm allowed to share this.
I know. Our last company was super strict about this, which put a lot of stress on me because I feel like...
I think it was at the last company,
Yeah.
but I had a client's parent. She was going to throw away a pair of new ice skates. And she was like, do you want it? I'm going to throw it away. And so I was like, if you're going to throw it away, I'm going to take it.
Right. Because then it's just trash that you're taking from their trash can. And actually, I had a family do that too. So the mom, I would sit there at their dinner table and watch them eat 5 nights a week, and I would always refuse any food because that's a huge, you don't do that. It's
and you're working on like
professional,
behaviors
exactly.
during the meal, right?
Exactly, yeah. And so after a while, though, sometimes she would like put something in like a Ziploc, and she'd be like, I'm gonna go put this on top of my trash can. It's trash. So it's not a gift, it's just trash if it's something that you're interested in. But as a young professional also, and you don't have your supervisor there with you, you're just doing your best. And that's like one of the, I don't want to say a perk of the job, but like if you are able to make those close relationships with these families, as I feel like as long as you can work professionally, you should be able to accept maybe like a $5 gift card for Christmas. But we were not allowed to do that ever. I remember our last company being very strict about that, and that was a little stressful because we would have to be like, no, absolutely not. No gifts, nothing thoughtful for Christmas, not even a Christmas card.
I mean, I understand why they wanted those like strict boundaries, but like teachers at school or like tutors, like
we accept plenty
it's
of
just
gifts.
like a token of appreciation for like
Exactly.
everything that you do.
Exactly.
And I feel like sometimes you get like very close with parents because you do like all this consultation with them, and then sometimes they like share too much, and then it becomes like a counseling session.
Yes.
And I mean, I'm like, I feel great that like they feel comfortable enough to like share those things and like work with me, but like it was hard to keep those boundaries.
Yes, it was very stressful for sure.
Yeah. So I guess to finish this video off, I wanted to kind of share our own opinions of the field. And this is just from our personal experience and what we know as a school psychology intern and as a special education teacher and people who have worked in ABA. I think there's like a debate in the field of whether or not it's ethical, whether or not like we should be practicing it. And there are some like social media groups for people on the spectrum, and a lot of them are saying, oh, it's abuse. And people are like, oh, then should we be doing it? But I think sometimes for children with autism, if they're injuring themselves or if they need to learn how to communicate, it is a really, really helpful tool and sometimes like a necessity. What are your thoughts?
So I think, there's a lot of debate out there. And I think about my experiences and, if I had a child with special needs who somebody suggested ABA for, I'm honestly not sure that, the 22-year-old me, I wouldn't want that girl to be my child's ABA therapist. I just wouldn't. I didn't know what I was doing. I was put on the spot. I was not given adequate training or guidance or supervision or the tools to do my job effectively. So now when I have families, like parents of students, they sometimes ask me, what do you think about ABA? Should we look into it? Or they're in the process of getting qualified for it through Medicaid. And the advice that I always give to them is to just be very involved, be very informed about the company that you are trusting your child with. If you are getting hours of ABA, that's a lot of time that your child will be spending with a person. So I tell them, look at their credentials, look at the company, their history, how long they've been offering ABA, look at their supervisors, who will be your child's supervisor, what are their credentials, how long have they been a supervisor, and just understand exactly what you want to get out of ABA, because like you said, sometimes there are children who could really use it. They have self-injurious behaviors, or they need extra help with toilet training, or adaptive skills, feeding themselves, very practical life things that an ABA therapist can sit down and work on, and you can see very concrete results. But it just depends on what you want to get out of it, and how you think that should go, how the process should work, what the expectations will be for your child. You know, are they going to be, is there going to be a negative punishment, or are they going to be given positive reinforcement, for example? Look at their plan. I just tell them to be very, very involved and very informed before making the decision to receive ABA services. Because, like we've talked about also, the services can vary from therapist to therapist and from company to company and from supervisor to supervisor. You might get very different services and very different results depending which direction you go in.
Yeah, and I think a lot of parents actually don't know much about ABA. So if you are a parent, definitely ask the supervisor to meet with you and do some parent training. I think that's part of their job.
Yeah.
And they have to talk to you to like get information about the child. So I think that is really important. They need to get more parent training in the whole process.
Yeah.
And I feel like the other part of the debate is like, oh, like if a child is like doing something that's not harmful to themselves and not harmful to other people, like, should we change it so it matches like society's norms? I don't know. Like, do you do that in the classroom if someone's, I guess, like stimming?
Right.
Do you usually let them?
So in general, I mean, there's always different exceptions and individual circumstances, but in general, if my students are not hurting themselves, not hurting anybody else, and they're able to access, you know, their education, then I let them be. Because like you said, should we change certain things about people just so that we are more comfortable? You know, that can be debated. It's definitely up for debate. So me personally, I don't change behaviors unless it interferes with their education, or unless if somebody's getting hurt, obviously.
And that's your job as a teacher,
you
know, just make sure they're learning and no one, like, everyone's safe.
Yeah.
So I guess that's a wrap. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more similar content, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.